I'm sure you are all wondering, how did we come up with the topic of neurocognitive disorders for a church service? It does seem pretty strange. A few weeks ago, Pastor Smith was teaching on 1 Timothy 5. Those of you that were in there, you remember we had these conversations about widows and widows indeed, and how much the church's responsibility was to care for them. After class, he and I discussed those in the church who need assistance, and when the church has a responsibility for providing assistance, and then those in a church like ours who provide help or assistance out of Christian love. We have many in our church that have come alongside individuals who need our help. We also have those in our church family who are masterful at communicating needs, prayers, things that need to get done. We are very good at that. It is such a blessing to have such a loving and proactive church family. I forgot the clicker. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that encouragement. My wife just reminded me that I'm having cognitive decline. My conversation with Pastor continued into the subject of caring for my mother and how many others in our church are caring for loved ones or friends with health issues, and it moved on to addressing those issues strategically for our own church family. I came up with 4 areas we will discuss that are important for different age groups in our church, but obviously we can't discuss every single aspect of everything that we need to discuss. So this is going to be an ongoing dialogue that we will work together as a church. So my first topic is understanding and overcoming age-related health concerns. You are either a senior saint, you will be a senior saint, Lord willing, or in some way you are caring or ministering to senior saints, like some of our younger folks that are here tonight. According to the American Psychological Association, the number of Americans over the age of 65 is 46 million, and that's projected to double by 2050. 1 out of 4 65-year-olds will live past the age of 90. A consensus of seniors regarding living longer are concerned about having a sound mind and the resources to care for themselves or for their spouse. The second thing, providing assistance to family members with neurocognitive disorders or experiencing neurocognitive disorders themselves. That could mean cognitive decline, which Dr. Gronin will bear out that I do not have that. Dementia, Alzheimer's, or other similar disorders, which we will discuss. Just because you have a tip-of-the-tongue moment does not mean you have Alzheimer's disease or dementia. We have a video that I produced several years ago with psychiatrist Dr. Mark Agronin. He was giving a speech at HCA's Aventura Hospital. Now, you'll hear some talking going on. There's about 50 seniors in there in their 80s and 90s, so they felt like there was no filter. They were just talking. Some of the comments, I did put them on the screen, and it was really good. He defined the parameters of age-related health issues and gave tools and tips on how to care for your memory health. He says learning new things can establish new neurosynaptic connections even in seniors, so we can have those new connections. Number 3, understanding the challenges of an aging population and how we can help church family members respond to the changes. You can eat healthy, exercise regularly, and be in good shape for your age. However, there are age-related health issues and conditions that become common after several decades of life. Without getting too gloomy, there are some that include flu, weight gain, sleep issues, proper nutrition, fragile bones, and cancer. Half of all cancers occur in individuals over 65. Not everyone will experience all these health challenges. The statistics are observed and reported by scientists in the health community, and we all have access to that information. And finally, We will discuss next time the formation of an advocacy team. This team will be comprised of healthcare professionals from our church, volunteers from our church, to assist people who are caring for our church family. The team would have been helpful in a recent situation. There was an individual getting discharged from a health facility, and it may have been helpful if someone could have said that we shouldn't discharge this person without a safe discharge plan. Well, that didn't happen. And we want to be on top of those kinds of things. So that might be a little oversimplified, but that's kind of what we want to do, is watch out for our church family and be able to help people, communicate with people in the hospital, in assisted living facilities, in nursing homes, be an advocate for the patient and the family. Sometimes family members throw their hands up. They don't know what to do. You were experiencing some things. My mom was at an assisted living facility. She wasn't trying to escape, but she did a lot of times at night say, I want to go home. So they said, well, since she wants to exit, she has to leave. So that's how that works. So I have been learning a lot as I act as my mother's power of attorney and primary caregiver with Janet's help, obviously not doing this by myself. For me and others who do this, it's a big responsibility and in some cases a completely new experience with many challenges. For those caring with someone with neurocognitive disease, you may also experience sundowning or sundowners. This refers to a group of symptoms that includes confusion, agitation, mood swings. These things occur late in the afternoon when the sun starts to go down. That's why they call it sundowning. And I would get a call 3 to 4 times a week with sundowning on full display with my mom. And it was challenging. So tonight, Dr. Mark Agronin, we're going to see a video. He's a nationally recognized expert on Alzheimer's disease. He is board certified for adult geriatric psychiatry and is the chief medical officer for Miami Jewish Health Systems. He's written 10 books, penned hundreds of articles pioneering new ways of addressing neurocognitive disorders. He wrote a very popular book called How We Age, A Doctor's Journey into the Heart of Growing Old. So part 1 this week, Dr. Agronin will lay the parameters of mental health late in life, what's normal and what's not. The second half will be next week, where he's going to give you tips and tools on how to deal to promote memory health, promote brain health, and do all those things that are very simple and comfortable. And we'll look at that next week. So after part 1, Janet will come up and discuss the clinical aspects of coping with neurocognitive disease. And Steve's going to lower the lights for us.
I want to begin with a story, and it's really a story about aging, a little bit about memory, but it speaks to what late life is like today and what it's becoming. So I worked with this fascinating woman going back about 10 years ago. And what I loved about her was she just had this incredible spirit. And there were a few things incredibly important to her. So number one, she was very politically involved. And every election, she would campaign vigorously for her particular candidate, really big on getting out the vote. And she especially wanted older individuals, even in nursing homes, to be able to vote and take place. She was so excited about this and so involved in the community that every election cycle, the local news would come and interview her. And she candidate, this one is terrible. She really, that was very important to her. And for her, getting older was no barrier to her political and civic involvement. So the other thing she was very passionate about was her son. And not just her son, but very passionate about his love life. And she was very unhappy with his girlfriend and made that known to him. And as you can imagine, it was a source for some consternation between the two. But her, she felt, doesn't matter how old I am, I have beliefs, I have choices, and I'm going to make it known to other people. That for her, she was very fierce about that. Now, why do I tell this story? What's so unique or unusual about this woman? The reason I love talking about her, because she was doing all this at the age of 106. And so you can imagine her 85-year-old son was none too pleased about her involvement in his love life. Even to the point where she refused to attend his marriage. So you can imagine some of the... But it just goes to show that, we tend to think about age in terms of limitations, but we should also think about age in terms of opportunity, possibility, creativity, things like that. And that's a very important message regardless of what someone is experiencing as they get older, because how we look at it, how we view it, has a lot to do with what the experience is like. And I'll come back to this message. Fascinating woman, Enrika van Andelschipper, was a Dutch lady who lived to be 116. Anyone here want to live to be 116? Any takers? Okay. But are you going to put some conditions on it? Let me ask that.
Yes.
Okay. What would those conditions be?
Maybe if I'm absolutely in a coma, but I believe in fighting for every day.
Okay.
Making every day worthwhile
So
for others.
So things to be meaningful and giving to other people,
Yes.
and good mental health. Okay. Good physical health. So I think we'd agree we might be takers to live to this age, but with a few conditions imposed upon it. And of course, this woman, everyone is curious, what was your secret? How did you live to be 116? So the question is, do you think, was she a major athlete? Did she have an incredible diet? Do you think every day it was, organic vegetables and fruits? So they asked her, what was your secret? And she says, I have two secrets to living to be 116. Number one, she said, every day I have a glass of orange juice. That makes sense. It's a fruit. It's fruit juice. And we know that there are benefits, lots of vitamins and minerals. And she said, the second thing is every day I also eat pickled herring. And I'm not sure, I took a little creative license here. I'm not sure she combined the two. But that one is not so clear what purpose that's going to serve in terms of living to be 116. But when she was 112, they did neuropsychological testing on her, and she scored at about a typical 80-year-old. And when she passed away, she actually donated her brain to science, and they found remarkably that her brain had no abnormal findings on it. So I don't know whether it's the orange juice or the pickled herring, or it had nothing to do with it. It really says several things about aging. Number one is that there is no magic formula. Everyone is a little different, and we can talk about what some of those differences are. But, it's a combination of your genetic endowment, your lifestyle, opportunities you have, lots of different things that factor into it. It also shows the possibility that if we're able to successfully deal with medical issues, mental health issues, that we can not only extend life, but we can extend it and give the meaning and the good mental health, the good physical health, all the conditions that we would want. That's really key, and those are the waters that we're heading into. So as we talk in a few minutes about memory, we're going to put it within that context. Now, what is happening with aging right now? So about 2,000 years ago, the average lifespan was about 25 years old. And a lot depended on your station in life. So if you were a wealthy person and you had good access to food, forget about the quality, you just want food, and doctors, and the state of medicine there was very different than now. But even so, you might live longer. So a few people did live into what we consider old age, into their 60s and 70s. If you were just a part of the normal rabble, you might not have fared so well because you didn't always have access to good food, and calamities would come about. We know from records, we know from inscriptions on tombs that, again, 25, 30 was about the average lifespan. In 1900, so let's advance the clock now, almost 2,000 years into the future. Anyone guess what was the average age in 1900, do you think? And it's hard to tell from this. It was about 50. Roughly 50. If you look at photos of individuals, if you have photos of your great-grandparents, and people look really old, but when you realize their age, they're usually in their 50s and 60s. Because back then, we didn't have a lot of the medical advances we have. Now, many people live longer, but what are those two factors? Any guesses? What's made the big difference in the last century? Antibiotics and vaccines. Those have been the two things, because most people, there are two times in life when most people died. Number one was in childhood, from childhood illnesses, infections. Number two was childbirth. The life expectancy for women was much lower than men because so many women died during childbirth. We don't, fortunately, see that today. However, we face the good news is that we're living longer, healthier lifespans. So most of us in this room will live into our 80s and 90s. Now the downside is that there still are a lot of diseases that are age-related. So what are the big three? Number one is cancer. Number two is heart disease. Three now is Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease doesn't kill you directly, but it leads to lots of other health issues that then end up ending your life. Even though for the most part, even with Alzheimer's disease, your lifespan is only shorter by, it's not that much that it shortens it, it's just that you don't have the quality of life, those conditions we talked about at the beginning that make all the difference. So imagine this. I don't think it's unrealistic to think in 50 years we will have that magical pill we're waiting with where you pop it and it clears out all your arteries in your heart. And we will have a cure for Alzheimer's disease. And we do lots of the research at Miami Jewish Health Systems, and I can tell you from some of the advances that we're getting closer and closer. We won't have a cure, I don't think, in 5 years, maybe 10 years, some treatment that will really make a difference, and I'll talk about our studies. But so picture this. Our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, when they turn 62, which is the average retirement age in this country currently, when they turn 62, they will on average have 30 or 40 years ahead of them, but free from cancer, heart disease, and Alzheimer's disease. So imagine what life will be like. The idea of retiring at 62 is going to be kind of crazy. Number one, because you have so much healthy, vigorous living ahead. You can't play golf for 30, 40 years. I suppose you could, but in addition, you won't be able to afford retiring at 62. Remember that when Medicare was established in the 1960s, age 65, when you'd qualify, you were old. You maybe had 5 to 10 years left if you were lucky. Now we don't think in those terms anymore, so it costs a lot more. This is our problem with healthcare now. This will be our problem in many other respects. So aging is going to change. I see this in my practice from 1999 till now. I have a lot more people in their 90s coming to see me, not because of memory issues, but they're coming to see me because of mood issues and work-related issues, things that I never would have thought about working with someone in their 90s before. But that's how things are changing. So get ready. So at the same time, we can say, well, this is good news, this is exciting news, but we do face some obstacles now. So question, what is your fear of aging? What would you throw out? Anything in particular? Outliving your money, that's a very serious concern. Now, this is not a financial seminar today, so I'm not going to, I won't be addressing that. But that
creates mental issues.
Exactly. We tend to focus in late life on mental health or physical issues, but if you don't have the financial resources, it's a whole ripple effect. You're right. Yes?
That I won't be able to take care of myself. Somebody like my family will put me into a back room in their house, and I will be restricted in a lot of ways.
Exactly. So not being independent in part because of physical, but also because of mental changes, memory changes. But at the same time, the question is, well, why does memory change? How does it change? And is there anything we can do about it? And I'm going to give you some information and some tips on that today, because I want you to walk out of here with some ideas of what you can do so we take a really positive, active approach. What I wanted to show is that the power of memory. Why is it that one day, maybe you remember a few things, but my guess is most people can tell us what we're doing that day, and this picture has no meaning to them, versus the other day you can recall tons and tons of details.
Emotion.
Emotion is a big part of it. There's something called a flashbulb memory. And basically what this means is that when an event occurs, and everyone, I bet a lot can tell what you're doing on November 22nd, 1963, event that had this amount of emotional importance is imprinted on us almost like a picture. We can remember every detail, where we were, who we were with. So think about this. So you're describing all these details, emotions, circumstances, your mom chopping liver 50 years ago, over 50 years ago. So how is it that your brain, people say, I can't remember what I had for lunch a day ago, and you can reconstruct an entire day? So I'm making a larger point here, that our brains have incredible power to remember things. Imagine if every day you could remember things the way you could remember an event like this. It could be overload. In fact, there are some very rare people who have a condition where that happens. You can tell them any date and they remember everything about it. Most people can't. But it speaks to the power of our brain and the depths of our brain, things that we can't even imagine to do. And so we have to think about, why does that go wrong with certain people? What we call a tip of the tongue experience. Okay, everyone has had that. Those are experienced by everyone throughout the entire lifespan, but they become more frequent as we get older. How do we understand it? Well, memory is not just about remembering a fact or a name or what you did yesterday. Memory has many different facets to it, because you may have memory for how to walk, you have memory about words, names, many different types of memory, and they all work together and in many different parts of the brain. There is one major component in your brain called the hippocampus. It's like a little round snail-shaped organ in your brain. You have one on each side of your brain. That's your memory processing center. So if you don't have a hippocampus, or it's damaged, as happens in Alzheimer's disease, it's hard to learn new things. The other thing to keep in mind is that memory takes place not just in the brain, but in all the sense organs that bring it in. So if we want to look at this sequence of memory, you have to start with a sensation. You have to be able to hear, see, taste, feel something in order to remember it. And as we talk about this, think about with each step here how things can go wrong and how that might impact memory. Any guess, what do you think is the most powerful sense in terms of memory for a lot of people? Smells. Think about that. Have you ever had that experience where a smell comes to you and suddenly, it's like a door opens or a book opens and an entire memory, and not just a memory, but you feel that. These sensations come in and they're registered in your brain in what we call working memory. It's kind of like a chalkboard. You register things on it, you can erase it, you can bring it back. Our brains can only focus on about 7 different discrete items at a time. So if you picture in your mind a single apple, that's easy to do. Now picture 2 apples. Picture 3 apples. Now picture 5 apples. Now picture 7 distinct apples. It becomes more difficult. That's the capacity of the brain to do that. And so it means that we're limited in what we can focus on and remember, but it also means if we can group things and chunk them into fewer items, it's easier to remember. Working memory is just a way station. Then certain things go into our short-term memory, and this is just a picture of what your hippocampus looks like. It's a whole bundle of cells in your brain that are interconnected, and it makes a memory at least a little more permanent. Now, people think about memories as like they're etched in stone in your brain, but it's better to think about a memory almost like a gel, that it forms, and you can almost melt the gel and reform it. The emotions attached to it, they change over time, and this is actually a principle that is often used with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, where they have a memory that they can't get rid of, it's too strong, and you actually have them retell it over and over and over again, so some of the intensity of it is stripped away, and you actually change the memory a little bit. And memories are spread throughout our entire brain. It's not like you have a box in your brain holding your memories. Picture your brain more like a spider web, because memories have different components, visual components, auditory components, components that have to do with motion, all different things. And then certain things go into long-term memory storage. This is permanent memory storage. So when people begin developing memory disorders, what we often see is that this working memory is having trouble and things are not getting into short-term memory. So what they had for breakfast or lunch they don't remember, but anything in long-term memory is still there. So I hear this a lot of people come in and say, well, I don't understand it. They don't remember what they ate for breakfast, but they can tell me everything that went on 40 or 50 years ago. That's common. And you can have meaning and enjoyment from long-term memory in the senses as much as what maybe you remembered yesterday. So I illustrate this to begin thinking broadly about memory and cognition, and realizing that it's not all just whether you remember a name or a face, that there's a lot more to it than that. And many different factors can interrupt this. So this question, what's normal, what's not? It's normal to have memory lapses as you get older. Everyone does, and they become a little more frequent. And are there any factors that may be interrupting the memory processing that we can improve? So for instance, If you have hearing loss, if you don't hear something, you're not going to remember it, obviously. Or if you have visual impairment, you can't see something. So a lot of people are stubborn and will not get hearing aids when they need them. And so guess what? You're not going to remember a good part of your day because you can't hear or you can't see it. So that's not Alzheimer's disease. If someone is nervous, they're depressed, they're distracted by something going on, if you're not focusing on those items on the chalkboard in your working memory, there's no way they're going to end up being put into your short-term memory. And I'm sure you've had this experience before. You're really nervous, you're upset, you're focused on one little area, everything around you kind of falls away. So when I see someone late in life worried about memory, part of my first question is, well, are you having a lot of stress? What's your mood like? Are you feeling very depressed? Are you very nervous and anxious? Is that as people get older, how many here think that it's normal to be depressed as you get older, or depression is more common in late life? That's a common belief. Actually, what's interesting, when you look at rates of major depression, severe depression, they actually go down as we get older. More younger people are depressed than older people. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. We do see more, not as severe depression in states of Alzheimer's disease and other memory disorders, Parkinson's disease. So there's a lot of conditions that can make people depressed. But just by virtue of getting older doesn't mean you get more depressed. As well, to medications for depression, to therapy for depression. Denise was talking about this wonderful program you have, an IOP, an intensive outpatient program. And the whole point of this is to have people come on a more frequent basis to be with others, to interact in activities to help improve their mood, to make a difference. And people respond beautifully to it, even when they have some memory trouble. So this is why these programs are so important, that we get people involved in them. Anxiety disorders are because someone comes in and they're talking about, they're worried about their health, or they're having trouble with pain or difficulty breathing, and it's a panic attack. Often hidden ailments in late life. But lots and lots and lots of people still have significant anxiety. And anxiety is not just about worrying. Your body changes when you're anxious. So people, think about when you're really anxious, your muscles tense up, you breathe quicker sometimes, you feel it in your stomach, you feel it in your colon. These are all normal physiologic responses the body has when it's under stress. Good symptoms to have, but they're relatively benign. It doesn't mean you have some disease. It means that you're anxious or having a panic attack. And if we treat and reduce that anxiety, guess what? Those symptoms get better. They improve. So as you can see, just beginning to think about cognition and memory, we tap into so many other aspects of someone's daily functioning. If you're not getting enough sleep, or you're taking a certain medication that can affect memory, or you're sick, all of these factors can impair short-term memory. Sleep is a big part of it. A lot of people get good sleep, and just because you get older doesn't mean that you sleep less, but you don't sleep as efficiently if you look at how your brain processes sleep at night. And so you might only get 5 or 6 hours of sleep, of really good sleep. The question not is that enough? It's more, how efficient is your sleep? Are there things interrupting it, like something called obstructive sleep apnea? You're not getting enough oxygen to your brain at night. Or some people have trouble with they have what's called restless leg syndrome. Sleeping is something that's important to really get an evaluation for, and to realize it's not just about taking a pill for it. And those pills, not only can sleep deprivation itself hurt memory, but the of it can do the same.
Thank you. Thank you for remembering. You know, as I listened to Dr. Groden, I thought about the fact that, you know, the Bible is the answer, right? The Bible says do not be anxious, right? Meditate on God's word, have your devotions, all of those things. He knows that's best for us. And so really we have the answers as believers. So when we think about growing in faith, carrying in grace, The verse in 2 Peter 3:18, grow in grace and in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. So I just want to take a few minutes to express how God is using the care of Mom in growing my faith personally. My husband will testify that I have not consistently depended on God during this difficult journey over the last 6 years. In fact, he is my spiritual rock, and he says, you just don't have faith with this move to this new ALF. And so really seeing and trusting God. So when Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and they moved in with us from Pensacola, Florida, almost every day Mom would say, Dad, drive me home. In fact, she'd get out her Samsonite luggage. My husband would hand her the car keys. Well, he's gotten really good at managing dementia patients since then, but he said, go ahead, drive home, Mom. But it was very stressful for 6 months every day because she just could not process that her husband's legs didn't work, and Jim would carry him to the bathroom and carry him to the bed. It was, but she couldn't see it because of her mental decline. And so I have to say, even 6 years later, it's not every day, but that was the reason, as Jim mentioned, that we were required to move her from assisted living. We know she's not an exit risk. We know she would never know what to do. But because she would ask them to call her son and that she wanted to leave, their care committee called a meeting and said, you have 45 days. But because she's been here 4 years and she's family, we're going to give you time. And I have to testify tonight that I was upset. I thought all the things that, like the residents would say, Jim's their favorite preacher, and many that we grown to love, and just the way God worked in all of those situations with, in fact, Darlene, from the day we went in to be evaluated 4 years ago, I thought she was a worker from First Baptist Church in Newport Richey, and yet here she actually was a resident. And she and my mom had a wonderful fellowship, and Ruth knows that because she visited her many times. And I just didn't understand, but I know, and we know, all of you are just very mature spiritual Christians, but you know that nothing happens in our life that doesn't go through God's divine filter. For me and my mother-in-law, who is really mom to me and grandma to my kids, our kids. So I have experienced God's grace in caring for both of Jim's parents. And my parents died suddenly, which I asked the Lord, let my heart go before my brain, and die suddenly. But I really didn't experience it like with his parents because of this journey. So when we think about how we, and many of you could be up here saying these same things this evening, but in 2 Corinthians 1, verses 2 through 5, it reminds us that we go through these trials that we might comfort others. And I love these verses that who comforteth us in all of our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble by them that comforteth, whereas we ourselves are comforted by God. And many of you in this room have been that type of friend and come alongside us during this journey. And we are very appreciative. And so, as Jim mentioned, we already have that happening in the church, but Pastor would like to formalize it a little more so no one falls through the cracks, especially widows that have no family local, that then begin to have cognitive decline, because that is the time that they can be discharged from the hospital unsafely and be in a situation. So this is a photo of my mother-in-law's birthday last year when she turned 94. She's going on 95 in a few months. And you can see Sandy Frame and Ruth in this photo. And both of them have been such a blessing to my mother-in-law. And Ruth brings her the daily, I think you've brought her 5 or 6 in 1 month because she keeps losing her daily devotionals, and Ruth brings her another one. And I had a lot of knitting that Leanne Previtt needed for a project she was doing, and this was years ago now, that when Mom and Dad came to live with us. And there were all these teacup squares, beautiful, that she had crocheted, and they were just in the bag of things, and Sandy Frame said, could I have those? And I said, yes. She finished that Afghan, and she gave it to my mother-in-law for her birthday at this party. That's just an amazing story. So, as we think about ourselves, those of us in our age bracket tonight, raise your hand if you schedule yourself for an annual wellness visit with your primary care provider every year. Very good, excellent. You get an A+ on that. Now put your hands down. I want you to raise your hand if when you go, they do some kind of cognitive testing. They might keep it very simple, like remember these 3 unrelated words: banana, chair, sunrise. Banana, chair, sunrise. Raise your hand if that happened. Okay, good, good. So that under the federal Medicare insurance program, every provider that's licensed in America is required to do an initial cognitive assessment when the person turns 65 years old and they are enrolled in Medicare Part A. And then they are required to do it annually after that. In my experience as a student nurse practitioner, I've seen a mix of how that is handled. So there are 3 different tests that will test a person's mental status. And I know some of you would like a copy to take home. I have copies up here if you would like to test yourself or test your spouse or loved one. The one that's the most popular is that mini cog test that I referred to with the primary care office. But the 2 that are more involved is the mini mental state exam. That's the one I have up here. That's pretty well the standard. And then the Montreal cognitive assessment that a lot of the neurologists use. And the last time we took my mother-in-law to the neurologist about 4 years ago, she just very graciously said, we're not going to do another MRI. In fact, unless her primary care doctor, Jennifer White, wants her to come back, I don't need to see her anymore. My heart was broken because I wanted to know what her brain looked like, because she was having some of this decline. Very interesting on some of the perceptions between the providers on what they think someone should be cared for and not. So one of the goals of these 2 sessions were to provide some preventative tips that we're going to spend a lot of time on next week, that we can really enjoy our golden years, which I'm a part of that group. And then the second goal is to recognize those changes early in our loved ones. I did get from the Alzheimer's Association a little bookmark that has 12 things that are warning signs, and I'm going to give that as a handout next week that we'll talk about in more detail. So, if you had this MME test done and you scored 30, say you take that home tonight or this week and you do it, 30 is a perfect score. But if your loved one scores in the 20s, 24, they're starting to have mild decline. And then when they get into the 18, 14 scoring, then they have pretty significant moderate decline. So raise your hand, don't shout it out, but raise your hand if you can remember those 3 unrelated words. All right, Randy and Vicki, you say it together. Very good, give them a round of applause. So I have a prize for you for next week. I walked out of the house without the prize. I didn't remember to bring it. So this is just a really nice slide to show that, as Dr. Groden stated, it's not just this short-term memory in this one box of the brain, right? So it's that executive functioning. Like my mother-in-law, about in 2005, she would go driving and get lost. So she voluntarily gave up the keys to drive, and they went down to one car. Not everyone recognizes it, and that can be a struggle for you in their safety driving. So all of these areas are very a part of it that he really described well in the video tonight. So I want you to realize that dementia is an umbrella term for all of these disorders. And really, each of these disorders affects a different part of the brain. So Alzheimer's is about 75 to 80% of dementia is going to be this type. And depending on what part of the brain is affected, along with their five senses, they can show a different picture, and that's why you see different people acting in different ways. The Lewy body is more of a Parkinson-like symptom that you build up proteins in your brain. That's a really tough one when people have that. Vascular dementia, my mother-in-law actually has a combination of vascular and Alzheimer's. Vascular, very interesting that back in like early 2000s, she said, I have these weird headaches. They're not like headaches, it's like tingling. Well, what was happening, according to the CAT scan of her brain, is the small blood vessels that feed the cerebral cortex, the thinking part of the brain, were closing off. And as soon as they completely closed off, that's when she said, my memory shot. She couldn't play table games anymore on Friday night, and she didn't realize even that her memory was the way it was. When we think of frontal brain, we think of Ron Hamilton, right? That was a very rapid one. So once again, this is just looking at the different areas of the brain that is affected for your cognitive decline. Now, I'm not an expert. I am certainly not certified or licensed to read CTs and MRIs, but the point of this slide is that when you see your provider, and they do CT scans and MRIs, they're going to see structural changes in the brain. Now, just because the structural changes are significant, that does not mean that they're functioning at that level. So they can, like my mother-in-law, the neurologist even said she is functioning at a much higher level than that MOCA of score of 14. And so really, you don't want to go just by the CT or MRI. You want to do that physical examination and that screening to really get the accurate picture. And my mother-in-law still plays the piano and the organ. Last night, Ruth and I sat there on Friday night, I think it was, singing hymns with her. And one of the ladies that's across the hall from her, she plays the organ and piano, and she actually donated her organ to the main activity area, and she was showing my mother-in-law how to turn it on, and they were playing it together the other day. So this, I think one thing that I have learned through this journey is that, my mother-in-law says it, she even said it to me this morning, dear, dear, growing old is for the birds. I never knew it would be like this. But you know, the Bible already tells us it's going to be like this. This is just a temporary housing of our soul and spirit that's going to heaven. But Ecclesiastes 12, 3-7, if you read that, it talks about the grinders are going to cease because there's only a few of them left, right? Your eyes are going to darken. The sound of the grinding is low because of your hearing. And so when you have an opportunity, we don't have time tonight to read all those verses, but it really describes the aging process of the physical body and realizing that, that this is just a temporary temple and that we are going to have a glorified body when we see the Lord. So next week, we're really going to spend much more time. I have a handout on some really routines and things that you can do for brain health. I love this slide because of all the fruit and vegetables that are there that makes up the brain. But just in summary, you want to do moderate aerobic exercise at least 150 minutes a week. So that means about 10,000 steps a day. You should be drinking water at least half your body weight in ounces every day. Learning new skills and knowledge, following the Mediterranean diet, reducing the lipids in your diet. So preventing cognitive decline is a major goal of maintaining long-term brain health. There's not any, as Dr. Groden said, there's not one single lifestyle change, but certainly when your lipids are over 100 and your triglycerides are over 150, and there's things that we can do. Some of it's genetics, like he said, but some of it is healthy living. So as we close tonight, we want to just take a minute to open. We have to go? Okay, it's time to leave. So I hope next week we can take some time to share, because you in this room have many experiences that we can learn from each other as well. Okay, thank you.